your eyes. Take a deep breath. Let reality melt away. Let hot liquid love flow through your veins. Welcome to Into Deep.
Hi, I'm your host, Jack Rowland. Thank you for allowing me into your mind. Today's guest is none other than Shane Mauss. Shane is a stand-up comedian, host of the Here We Are podcast, an adventurous psychonaut, and most importantly of all, a wonderful human being. Please welcome Shane Mauss.
Let's get deep.
Is there a point to all this?
I think we're getting in too deep.
You don't apply. Bad luck.
Oh, I have one speed, I have one gear. Go, 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 go.
I'll tell you when we're getting in too deep.
Good morning, Shane Mauss.
Hello, I'm a big fan of your work.
Oh, thank you, man. I that's weird to hear because I'm a massive fan of everything you do.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate that.
No, seriously, I've listened to you. I don't know whether you've ever had this, but it's weird when you actually talk to specifically a podcaster that you've been listening to for a while, because you really kind of get to know someone without ever meeting them, and it's more so than meeting any other person of influence. It's quite
yeah.
Yep.
It's funny because I have, I mean, this happens after shows, but then I also have, once in a while. So I was working with, kind of canceled the next couple because of COVID. But I was working with this group, Myco Meditations in Jamaica, doing these, legal psilocybin retreats.
Amazing.
And I was sometimes, just because I believed in it, I would take a fun break from touring and go and help facilitate that. And I would get, sometimes some of my fans and stuff would come. And so the point is that people would often be like, I feel like I know like everything about you, not just because like you, I listen to you on all these podcasts and your own podcast, but you're like, I'm also like a pathological oversharer. And
we're grateful for it. We're grateful for that.
And so people do know me really well. And people are always like, is that weird that it's like this one-sided thing that like you don't know me as well, but I know you? And I'm like, I don't know. I kind of like it because it is. I mean, I guess it's different. It's a strange kind of human experience where maybe we like haven't evolved in a world where like a person would know you really well, but you wouldn't know them at all. But at the same time, for me, as someone who finds the world awkward to navigate on a social level because I don't find myself very readily identifying with people, and I find it difficult to make small talk. And so when someone's like really familiar with my perspective and everything, it's just makes my life easier because I'm like, oh, great. Okay, so here's what I've been thinking about lately. I don't need to like give you the whole like catching up on what my thoughts are on like consciousness or whatever. We can just like get right into the conversation.
Sorry.
No, so I quite like it. Actually,
I had that kind of first realization. I used to go to the Ram Dass retreat. So you're familiar with Ram Dass?
Yeah.
So met.
I mean, I'm not super familiar with all of his stuff, but I'm probably more familiar than the average person.
But
I guess.
one thing when you go there, like met Duncan Trussell, for instance, and just everyone flocks to Duncan because he's so magnetic and wonderful. But yeah, it is. I noticed that with a lot of people. I kind of felt for him. He's just like was constantly like would just get thrown into these mid conversations of like really deep, interesting things of conversations he'd had probably months ago. So yeah, it's it must be a funny feeling. But tell me about these facilitating these mushroom trips in Jamaica. What would you actually do? That's awesome.
I mean, I don't know what exactly I do because it's tough to say. So when I first started, so what happened was I was making this documentary of mine, Psychonautics, a comics exploration of psychedelics.
Watched it the other night. It's amazing. It's so good.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's so good.
Oh,
I loved it,
man. And a little behind the scenes of how it came together, I was just like, I was doing this psychedelic tour. I'd put together this like little indie show about psychedelics that was like kind of drawing a bigger crowd than I thought possible. I wasn't really involved in the psychedelic communities or anything. And, I'd never been to Burning Man. I didn't know the psychedelic artists or the researchers. And I started becoming a little more familiar with the worlds as things went on. I put together this big tour. This guy, Matt Schuler, who actually just like makes a lot of comedy specials usually as his main job. He'd been wanting to like do a sitcom or some other project. He'd shot a lot of pilots and stuff. He heard me talking about my tour on Mark Maron. He was like, he wasn't big into psychedelics, but he was interested in them. Had fond experiences, and reached out to me about that. And when he originally reached out, he was like, "God, I'm making this story longer than it needs to be." But he just thought my background was interesting with my science podcast, Here We Are, and everything. And he wanted to do something. I was like, well, I'm interested in doing documentary stuff. I don't want to do like a contrived like sitcom or whatever. And then we were talking about what it would be about. And it was actually like, because psychedelics are kind of like a fraction of my interests, I was kind of more interested in doing something about like evolutionary psychology or something. I didn't even know what. And it just so happened that I was booked to perform on a comedy gala with Duncan Trussell at MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, at their 2017 Psychedelic Science Conference, and I'm like, oh, well, there is this thing. It only happens every 4 years. It's the biggest conference, psychedelic research conference in the world. I imagine it's going to be like strange and interesting and like visually appealing, which is weird. We ended up not using like any footage from the conference, but anyway, that's how I was able to get all of the top researchers. So we just turned a hotel room that the conference is at into a studio and just had all of the top psychedelic researchers, just one after another, for just 3 days straight.
For just podcasting?
Just back to back, just interviewing them. That's how we got all the talking heads, all the great talking heads footage. And then we looked at it and we were like, what do we do now? And then we like, I was like, at first I was going to be like, do I just make a documentary about like the best way to trip or something like that? I mean, I don't consider myself any kind of an expert. I just put together a show of my experiences. People really liked it. And so we were like, geez, we don't know what to do. And I guess we'll just start filming me doing psychedelics. and at that same time, Eric Osborne got wind of the project, who is the founder of Myco Meditations, and he is like, hey, I'll like, if you want to come out mushroom picking with me in Louisiana, I have this retreat in Jamaica, but like, I'll fly you out here and everything to take a look around. And I talked with him for a while, and I was like, this dude is very interesting and like loves mushroom, like mycology, like all mushrooms, not just psilocybin.
Yeah, I really want to get into like a foraging mushroom nerd group as soon as this lockdown's done. It's once you start taking interest in mushrooms, it's just endless how amazing they are. They're the most, even without this, like you say, without the psychedelic aspect of it, they are just the trippiest creatures ever, aren't they? They look beautiful. There's no limits of how they grow. They're amazing.
Yeah, and by the way, that's no reason to wait. This is like mushroom picking is the perfect quarantine hobby to pick up on.
We've just entered a few days ago a stage 4 lockdown because our city of Melbourne is just going rampant with the old virus. So we've got like an 8 p.m. curfew. You're not allowed to leave 5 kilometers from your house. Otherwise you get a big fine.
Whoa.
So we got 6 weeks of that. So might have to
wait.
Yeah. It's
Wow.
It just is, isn't it? Yeah.
What are the politics? I imagine you're fairly familiar with like the American politics.
All too familiar.
Yeah. So what's the difference over there?
In terms of what the governments have approached
how it's being managed? Yeah.
Well, it's we kind of came down quite fiercely, I guess, at the start with a across the board lockdown across the whole country. And we got our numbers down to about 350 active cases, like actually worked, did pretty good. And then, boom, I think we've got 3,500 cases just in my city. And my suburb is actually a real hotspot as well. So that's a bonus.
Yeah, I think people started seeing quarantine fatigue. Plus some of the lower numbers or whatever, and people celebrating like the curve, flattening the curve or whatever is just like, I mean, until people wrap their heads around this idea of exponential growth, it's just like,
it's
insane.
It's scary. And actually, your podcast I was listening the other day gave me a little bit more hope because I think everyone's just forgotten the possibility that a vaccine might actually come. I mean, I just kind of assumed, well, this is life now. So it was the one on the one you did on immunity, and I can't remember the doctor's name. She was awesome, by the way.
Jennifer Brinkworth, I think.
Yeah, I think that's it. She was great, but she was estimating around January. Obviously, no one knows, but I was like, oh, cool. I never even I forgot to think about that.
if you think about it, in terms of, because this all just seems like an excruciating long time for people and the economy and all these, I get it. But if you think about it just in terms of how long it's been since March, since this all was just like, okay, everyone knows about this stuff now. This isn't just like a passing thing, and then full lockdowns started. I feel like time's zipped right by. Yeah, really.
I think it's both for me. It's like it's been ages, but it's also been like no time at all.
Yeah,
it's just every day is bleeding into the other.
And so I look at it as it's just like, okay, there's 3 more of these. If I can manage to do this 3 more times and make the most of it in that time, then that I think it'll zip right by. I've put goals in place where if quarantine ends like if the possibility of me doing a full tour happens before my what I think is cautiously optimistic, which is fall 2021, I'll kind of be scrambling to like restructure things, and I'll almost be like, oh no, things got better sooner than I thought they would.
I'm not
And
prepared.
I've intentionally kind of done that to myself, just as like a kind of a cognitive reframing of the situation that we're in. Because don't get me wrong, that will be fantastic. I will love to be wrong. I will love to be like the guy that was like, boy, Shane was a little overly cautious during that Corona thing, wasn't he? He was a little bit alarmist, because the people not taking it seriously enough are the ones, in my opinion, that are a little bit the problem. And
yeah, it's creeping in here. It's creeping in. I've got a theory that, we did the first lockdown. The second lockdown's now happening. Everyone's pretty pissed off about it, but accepting. I don't know how the general population is going to cope with a third lockdown. Say we get the numbers right again, and then we have to go into a third one. I can imagine the anti-mask people and the protesters being
you guys have anti-mask people too?
Small, just a bit, not as much as you guys, but it's definitely happening. It's definitely happening.
Wow.
I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's conspiracy theory. It's a good time for conspiracy theories, isn't it? But
it sure is.
But which I usually don't have a problem with at all. I mean, I used to be an avid conspiracy theorist. I still find them very interesting as fun, like mind games, but I don't believe.
And there are real conspiracies that actually happen.
But now I feel they're more dangerous than ever. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So you can kind of believe the world's flat or the moon's hollow or whatever, but now if you're claiming 5G and burning down towers or just not wearing masks or not social distancing, there's actual real repercussions for being wearing
like
that
I mean it's the same with like even just I think speaking out against, say, like government tyranny or too much regulation of individual rights is like absolutely a valid thing that we should be. But I've been rebelling against social norms and laws and every kind of authority figure my entire life. But now it's just like, look, if you want to rebel, you can always take your pants off and walk around without pants in public. I mean, you're not going to get a bunch of people sick by doing that, and that's a law that's inhibiting your right to flop your dick around in public. It's strange that it's the mask thing. But how old are you?
I'm 33.
33. So I don't know where Australia was at, but did you live through like the great seatbelt debate?
Oh, really? There was a great seatbelt debate. No, I did not. Well, maybe, but I have no memory of this. I was actually about to use that as an example, but there was a seatbelt debate, huh?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and speaking of like kind of conspiracies and the difference between conspiracy and cover up and just kind of run-of-the-mill corruption, car safety was a real issue that was expensive to fix for car manufacturers. And car manufacturers had, even though, so at first there was car companies that were like, we're going to offer a seatbelt as an option for customers that want to have this added safety. And big car manufacturers came after car companies that tried to do that because they didn't want there to be, they had I guess they were right, the foresight to be like, well, the government's going to make us put these things in, and then they're going to regulate us more. It's going to drive up our costs and everything else. We don't want to be regulated. We don't want these safety measures. And so are you familiar with like Ralph Nader?
Man, that name sounds familiar. I'm going to kick myself.
Yeah, well, he ran for president in the U.S. As a third-party candidate. He was like a consumer advocate. He was a lawyer whose best friend got killed in a vehicle accident. He looked into this particular vehicle his friend was driving. Turns out that it had this exceptionally high rate of accidents. It's because they made the back end of it spin out. Like they advertised it as like, hey, you can do like donuts with this car or whatever. So they screwed up like the back suspension in a way that actually made just regular driving ridiculously dangerous. And then they refused to like do any recall or anything like that. And he went after them. He ended up like winning a lawsuit against GM, General Motors. Sorry if you didn't know what I was talking about. Big car manufacturer had done all this crazy stuff that was found to be true, where they tried to like get women, like prostitutes and stuff, to like lure Ralph Nader to like discredit his reputation. All this stuff that was like brought to the surface. And he eventually won this big consumer advocacy thing. And so this is all like a little bit before my time. So then this leads into the great seatbelt debate. And I don't know my seatbelt history this well. This is just my understanding. I'm sure I'm off in a lot of ways. I was just a Ralph Nader fan. I'm a big fan of consumer advocacy. It's not something that I research. I don't think I've ever had an episode about this on the podcast. But in the 80s, when I was a kid, so this was a very distinct memory, was that, right around when I was 5 or so, it was seatbelts were now becoming this mandatory. You could get a ticket if you weren't wearing a seatbelt, and people lost their fuking minds. This was government tyranny. This is, they're uncomfortable, and like, God, I just can't breathe with this thing on, and like all of these things. How can you're gonna have, this is a police state that you're turning this into. Now you'll pull people over for no. I mean, it's very much like what I hear the anti-maskers and stuff saying now.
Well, that's one of the mask things, isn't it? It's like people have been arguing that if you have a mask, you could be more likely to get it because you're going to adjust it because it's uncomfortable. So your hands will be near your face, and your hands are just corona traps. So, or just don't touch your face.
Yeah, I mean this is motivated reasoning at its best. I would say, as someone who's motivated to believe in science, that masks are also a nice reminder to not touch your face, as well as just not just the particles of COVID that they may be possibly keeping out, but definitely keep from spreading. The added bonus of reminding people to keep their when someone's wearing a mask, it's a good reminder that there's a pathogen around, and that you want to keep your distance. And so it's also just like a sign that you want people to be 6 feet from you. Because it's just hard for. I was on a maskless hike the other day because I'm out hiking. I'm not gonna be around anyone.
How luxurious!
Yeah, and I was plenty far away from anyone. If I walk by, I like turn so I won't be in anyone's path, and I just. You could teach kids or something just to imagine that you have dragon's breath or something, and that like a flame is coming out that this far or something, and out of everyone's mouth all of the time. That's kind of what I've trained myself to think of
Yeah,
it
yeah,
as
yeah.
when I'm hiking around, and even in that, I was hiking and I was sitting out at this peak, and this person comes by and starts talking, and they're like, I start like moving away, and they're like, oh, I'm not gonna get too close or whatever, and then like kept on moving toward, and then I'd like move like around a shrub to like around a tree to be like, hey, okay, to like keep the small talk that I like that I'm not really that interested in having with this person, and they just couldn't. They weren't trying to. It was just they couldn't help themselves.
Couldn't break
They
that training in their brain. Yeah.
Yeah.
I even watch movies now and just see them like hugging and shaking hands and think,
like, what are you doing?
What a weird time that was. Look how irresponsible all these actors are.
I know, man.
I'm judging every movie now, just being real judgy.
Yeah. So the seatbelt thing, and same with the like not smoking thing that I lived through. We lived through where people had the same government tyranny and all, and now we just like know that it's better that there's not smoking indoors in restaurants. It's just we all have a better life for it. But the thing is we don't have 5 years to have these debates or to get everyone on the same page. People just need to like, hey, snap out. Like this is just, you know.
Yeah, I think it's gonna ramp up. I think the conspiracy theory frame of mind is gonna get much more before it doesn't. Which I'm so grateful for people like you who are not only psychedelically inclined, but spreading science. Your whole podcast is just talking to the professionals, and it's educating as well as entertaining, and it's we need more of that, huh? Like it's
Thanks,
really
man.
It's really good. You do good. You do good things. Shane.
Thanks. You know what's funny is when all of this started, I was, you know, for the listeners, like I'm a nobody. I've had like some I've had a modest amount of like nice success as a traditional comic like years ago. Like my like traditional comedy career peaked around like 2009, and I shortly after that decided to completely shift directions and get into science communication. I've had the science podcast. Here we are for 6 years, which
6 years.
Is like,
wow.
Yeah, and I love it. It's incredibly meaningful to me. I think that the things that scientists are doing are not only incredibly fascinating and entertaining, but so important. And, you know, it's really been like a bit of a pet project. And I get by on like whatever my comedy laurels that I had already established or whatever to market it. You know, I can get on, say, Duncan Trussell's podcast or something like that and promote myself and get a few new listeners. And I really am just like doing what I can to get these, because none of my guests are celebrities, and that's the name of the game in podcasting is like get these big name celebrities that are. And so when the pandemic happened, I was like, you know, I was never like I love what I'm doing. I find a lot of meaning in it. Part of the reason why I do what I do is because, you know, my experiences in psychedelics have shown me like the ego involved in like celebrity and all of that is like garbage. And if you're not saying anything meaningful, really, then like what's the point of just like I love a good dick joke, but I have so many of them. I still write them, but what's the point if that's like all you're doing? So I talk about the evolution of dicks now in my dick jokes, but the point is this pandemic happened and I was like, holy shit. Like I have a science podcast. I know all this. Like, how well positioned am I right now for the first time in my entire life that the general population is actually going to care about science? And now, 4 or 5 months into it, I'm like, wow, that was a naive idea.
That was a short-lived fantasy.
Yeah, very short.
Yeah.
So I very much,
Damn.
I not only appreciate you, I not only your fucking work, dude.
Oh,
is
thank you, man. That means a lot. That really, really means a
wow.
lot to me, man. Thank you.
I mean, the way that you can, I mean, I'm just now becoming familiar, but the way that you can somehow like your it it's rather than just like surrealist psychedelic stuff, which I'm a huge fan, and rather than just like capturing the inner world, capturing like the hyperspace or whatever, the way that you're able to mix the nature and the environment, and what's the
Oh, thank
frame
you,
of
man. Thank you.
what's the type of paint that's just like just painting a thing that is
Figurative or yeah, more like
yeah,
representational painting.
yeah, but the way that you're able to like blend that into like the psychedelic world, because that's so much of, I mean, as a mushroom guy, mushrooms were my first love and still probably my favorite. Like that's what trees look like on not only when you're on mushrooms, but that's how you start to appreciate them after you've had these experiences. And it's like you've captured that feeling in
Oh
a way
man,
that
thank
I
you.
haven't seen anyone else do.
Thank you so much, dude. That really means a lot. And again,
It's incredible.
I do owe a lot of it to psychedelics. At university when I was painting, I was always a good drawer, but man, the work I was churning out at university was just dog shit. It was so uninspiring. It was like cityscapes that were like gray and muted and just drab. Oh, so bad, man. And then yeah, basically first double dose of acid and Rainbow Serpent Music Festival sent me back home with a headband around my head and kind of like I was like have you seen that movie with Michael Cera, Crystal Fairy? It's basically Michael Cera just plays this like really enthusiastic, kind of annoying psychedelic enthusiast. That was basically me. Just like I was preaching to everyone how you know this is the answer. I've toned it down a bit these days. Thank God, because I reckon I would have been pretty annoying for a few years there, but meaning well. But yeah, it's definitely helped my creativity for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what's so cool? Some of your stuff that I look at, I look and then I'm like, whoa, this is like a great representation of psychedelic, or this is like psychedelic art. And then I look at it and I'm like, oh no, this is a real place. This is actually like a real tree that exists. just with those kind of goggles on. And yeah, it's pretty cool, man. It's you nailed it. And so it's cool that you're also into. It's another reason why I appreciate you, is because I'm getting a little fed up with the psychedelic crowd these days, because there's just too many conspiracy theorists in it, which is just like,
I was wanting to ask you about that. Yeah, I mean, you've been catapulted into the like psychedelic world. Almost, you know, you're kind of like a figurehead almost, you know, these days. I think, you know, as is like someone like Duncan Trussell or you know, Alex Gray. We're getting these like really cool, interesting creatives that are you know, kind of carrying the torch a bit. So I mean, I went to like the Alex Gray Cosm or Entheon when I was over there, and I love that world. I love the art. I love Alex and Alison Gray. But you know, like everyone's got their own idea of what's going on. You know, everyone there's not a consistent train of thought of, you talk to one person, it's like, well, of course the DMT realm is a different place. And I think I kind of relate to like your outlook. Like, I don't know. I've seen some shit. I've been in some places, I've met some things, but I have no idea what my brain is capable of. I don't know if it's generated by my brain or if you're actually tapping into another dimension. But you talk to other people often, and it's not up for debate. This is how it is.
It's so dogmatic.
Yeah.
I'm even like, yeah, it might be what you're saying, but just use the word might.
Yeah.
Like,
totally.
Otherwise, I'm just gonna not believe you.
Yeah. I just kind of tap out when it gets to this is how it is. And
it's sometimes from the people that have had like 3 experiences ever too. Like sometimes the person that's say the most like dogmatically lecturing me about what DMT is, I'll even get sucked in trying to be open-minded and be like, wow, you sure have a strong perspective and some interesting thoughts. I'm just like, how many experiences have you had? It's like, I think I'm like fucking crazy for the number of breakthroughs that I've had, and so I'll be like, wow, this person must be very experienced, and I'll ask them, and they're like, oh, like I tried it once, I didn't really break through, but I, hoping to try again sometime. I go, what? You just gave me a 30-minute lecture about why I'm wrong about everything.
So one thing that you used to talk about, I can't remember whether it was on your podcast or one of the other various ones you've done, but you're very scientifically minded, but you've experienced a huge amount of things like DMT. I mean, your purple DMT girlfriend of the metaphysical plane is a good example of that. But you used to say a lot that
which for people that don't know, Comedy Central just somehow did this incredible animation to, it's hard to like make silly animation out of a psychedelic experience and not make it too silly and foolish and dumbed down, and they really nailed it.
It's great.
I was shocked, but people can watch that to know what we're talking about. But this purple woman that I see, and many different people see her as well in a DMT experience.
Does she still pop up?
Well, I haven't had a DMT breakthrough experience in 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, since the one I documented on my documentary.
That was the last one.
Spoiler alert, went to a psych ward not too long after that.
That'll make you take a break.
I've been thinking about it quite a bit. It's about time, but so a couple things. One, I'm kind of working on a book about my experiences, and I kind of want to like finish and then break through again to like before the editing process, like get down all of my thoughts as they are right now, and then break through again, check in, be like, oh, was that okay? Yeah, and figure out what needs to be tweaked. And then also I just like, now that it's been a while, I don't have the courage.
Yeah, that's the thing with it, isn't it? The longer you wait, the less inclined you are to tap back in. It's intense. It's intimidating, particularly. Sorry, go on.
Oh no, but I was gonna say, you must know Haken, Hism, the artist. Oh, you gotta check out his stuff.
Yeah.
He drew the purple woman perfectly.
Oh, right, great, awesome.
Here, hold on.
No worries. Yeah. What's his name? Hawken.
Yeah, HAKIM ASAM. I'll just show you here quick. This is her.
Wow. Yeah. That's That's
this
beautiful.
is her for sure.
Yeah.
So listeners can Google his name and see. I mean, it's just like exactly her. And then finding that picture, which by the way, I wasn't like looking for DMT art. I was trying to sort out. I was trying to give myself a physics refresher and was Googling something or other about different dimensions and how we can, what dimensions we can perceive and the other ideas of the imperceivable dimensions. I don't even remember exactly what I was doing, but somehow in some Google search of physics ideas, a purple woman popped up right when I was like starting to get to like know her a little bit.
Yeah, right.
It was really strange. And then yeah, and this guy in Turkey that I had never talked to, Caesar, clear as day in the DMT state. Lots of other people seem to. And so yeah, it's definitely a strange thing to wrap the head around, especially from a scientific.
Well, that was that's what I wanted to ask you. I've actually wanted to ask you this years ago when I started listening to your podcast, but I remember, I don't know whether your opinion or your outlook has changed at all. But you used to think it was very much, these are things firing off in my brain. This is just shows how complex and amazing the brain is, and it was kind of the metaphysical is. You didn't seem to believe in that as a likely option. I'm wondering how you think about it now, having gone so far deep into the other dimensions, the other realms, whatever you want to call it. You know, when you're there, it's real. You know, something will pop up right at you, a little creature, whatever it is, and you're like, that's like, that's there.
Yeah.
What is your kind of outlook?
Well, I just realized I was using the wrong microphone. Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you crystal clear, buddy.
Now?
Yeah, no, you sound great.
Good. Well, I would say that I still don't know my science. When I put on my lab coat explanation, it's to summarize. And I believe this to be true, whether or not it explains the purple woman or why other people see her. But I think it's just, and I'm not very familiar with Carl Jung, but when I explain my ideas, people compare them to Jungian ideas, which were kind of evolutionary psychology type stuff, which is my jam, which is the idea that that in putting together our perception, our brain has to store information of different concepts of objects, and so like the reason why you can look at a car and know that it's a car even if you've never seen a car quite like it before is because you have these kind of templates or exemplars, or I think Jung called them I forget what he called them. Some people might call them prototypes. Oh geez, why? Of course, the one that he called them is slipping my mind. But regardless, this we wouldn't be able to perceive things visually without kind of putting these ideas, these templates together, like a computer AI. Just to be able to be like, this thing is a face, that took forever to be able to teach a computer that without having to just be without a computer having to sort through every image of every conceivable face to understand and identify something that is a face. And so anyhow, we have these kind of structures, these templates for making sense of life. Some of them probably evolved. When people say hallucinate like snakes or spiders or something like that, that might be something that evolved, that you got wary of. Our ancestors developed eventually over time structures in the brain that were able to identify snakes and spiders and things. You can take primates that have never seen an actual snake and maybe grew up in a zoo or whatever, and throw a snake seeming thing in there, and they have an intuitive response.
Yeah, it's like cats
to
with a
it.
cucumber. Have you seen those videos where you put a cucumber behind a cat and they just lose it?
Yeah. And I think that there's just something, so I think that in our inner worlds, which I believe that we get a look into in the DMT state, I would liken it to the movie Inside Out. Have you seen the movie
No, I
Inside
haven't.
Out?
No.
This little girl, it's a Pixar film. This little girl has these representations of her different emotional states. Like, this is joy, this is anger, this is sadness, and these different characters inside of her head drive her, just like our emotions drive us in these different ways. And I think that there are worlds inside of our heads that are actually doing that. That I think that is like a really nice representation for what's actually happening. I think that we all wear many different hats in life, and I think that those many different hats, those concepts of who we are actually stored somewhere, just like we can dream and dream representations of other people doing things. And I could have a dream of you tonight, you and I having a new podcast conversation, or maybe even having a drink in a bar, a situation that we've never. So I could be in a bar with you having a drink, a thing we've never done. You would look convincingly just like you.
As real as
You
real
would be
can
talking to me. My brain would be writing the script that you're saying to me. You and I having a conversation, and I wouldn't even be aware that I'm actually creating a representation of you that's talking to me. And for the brain to be able to do that's amazing. And I must now have some sort of representation of you stored somewhere in my mind. But in terms of an evolution, what sort of things we evolve, it does seem like there's classic ideas of, say, a female or a male, or a lion or a snake or whatever, that we might have these evolved structures. And if that is artificially stimulated in a psychedelic world, could that be why someone is interacting with like this sort of purple woman, and it just looks different in that, because everything looks different in this kind of holographic landscape that is, I would call, the kind of foundations of our perception. And the reason I kind of think that is because it's almost too perfect. Like everything in those worlds is way too symmetrical.
Yeah.
And like,
it's too organized. It's so organized.
It's so organized, which makes sense for a brain processing, for a foundational, the building blocks of perception. It makes a lot more sense to have things like nice and clean and organized. If you picture your idea of a light bulb, you have like a very standard light bulb that you picture, and then when you see like some new energy efficient light bulb or swirly light bulb or decorative light bulb, you get it. You get that it's a light, but you still used that same, when you close your eyes, in your mind's eye, you still have that very
template,
standard classic example of a light bulb. And I just think that's perhaps what we're tapping into. And because rather than although it seems so perfect and real, that's just makes sense for the brain to start from there, because symmetry, although it might be hard for us to draw something symmetrical, it's actually a nice building block in terms of geometrical patterns and stuff. Like, something like a fractal. When we see a fractal, it's so mind-blowing, or to learn about the Fibonacci sequence, and that the leaves on a plant follow this Fibonacci sequence, like, whoa, how is that possible? But then when you look at the math of like each leaf wanting to collect as much sun as possible, and having each leaf on a given plant, say, scatter 33 degrees from one another, is the way
to
that
maximize
it
life.
happened to evolve to maximize life. It would actually be stranger if it wasn't that way.
Yeah.
And I feel that same way about, like, as cool as this visionary art, like my poster of my podcast, which I'm so very proud of, like this
It's such a cool
amazing
image.
digital. Yeah, it's so great. Topher Sipes made it, but at the same time, this is just screensaver shit. That, like, us, we're just look, we're just primates. Not only are we primates, we're fairly new to creating art. I would say that we've been doing it for maybe tens of thousands of years, which, okay, that's pretty good. That's a decent track record. But then, like, painting's even newer. And then if you take a look at something like computers, which are like maybe sort of 100 years old, really, a personal computer happened in my lifetime. I'm 40. Something like digital paint or something is like, what, 20 years old or something. So we're able to make these, like, quite nice little representations of this quote unquote kind of hyperspace. And we're these dumb primates with these, like, very new, like, computers are going to seem, the computers that we're on right now are going to seem ridiculous 30 years from now. So the idea that these spaces look like something that we can capture on these, what will soon to be known as, like, rudimentary machines, leads me to believe that the structures of our mind might be also using some very basic tools like that, much in the same way that Mario Brothers, looked a lot more symmetrical and basic than now. What really takes computational power is programming in, like, the cracks in things, the flaws, the asymmetries.
Yeah, right.
In an environment. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure you, as an artist, those are, like, the real details that make a piece.
Totally. Yep. Yeah. No, you're totally right. Yeah, it is. It's oh man, so much stuff is just, like, bouncing into my head of how, like, what I want to talk about now.
Because I've been going. Sorry for going on the longest monologues. You already know I'm like a monologuist, but holy crap, this one I'm especially bad.
No, but it's fun. It's like you're talking about these kind of templates, and it reminds me of some trips that I've kind of had. So, like, one time I was tripping, and it was DMT, and I saw this creature pop up, and then it got close to me, and then I could see the detail, and then it had fur on its face, and it kind of looked like a cat, and I came out in this stupefied state and said, the cat with 4 legs. And they're just like, what? I'm like, the cat with 4 legs. And I'm like, so in my mind, it was all kind of came from nothing. But then what I was just describing was something that already exists. Same with, like, these spirals, these Fibonacci spirals you see. Like, I've had these weird visionary states where these spirals are just kind of popping at me, like many, and then I just think, imagine if these could physically manifest. Then you just look at a cluster of succulents, and that's exactly what that is. That's those fractally Fibonacci sequence patterns that if they could physically materialize, they're growing in your yard everywhere. So yeah, it's very possible that, I mean, probable that it is just these mathematical templates that are built into us that we actually see every minute of the day and take for granted.
And on the other hand, it is strange that so many people, including myself, see a cat on DMT.
Cat
like,
on DMT.
Why is there a cartoon cat?
Yeah, like a Cheshire cat kind of thing with like not
Yeah.
quite one
dude.
shape, but also like ayahuasca. I've only tried it once, but the serpent and the goddamn leopard. Like everyone talks about the fucking serpent, the leopard. Why does everyone see those things, those deities or whatever you want to call them? Like what is this weird thread that kind of travels through many different people's experience? That's what gets me stuck. But hey, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth because I mean, look, I've also on the other side of things, I've thought that it also makes some kind of sense that we're in a simulation and that
the simulation's really showing itself now, isn't it? Everything's. I just did an Instagram message the other day saying we're now less like a Black Mirror episode, more like a South Park episode. Reality's just getting ridiculous.
I saw that.
It's so dumb. Like, anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No. I mean, I feel like the dumbness of it leads me to believe less that it's a simulation and more in just like these, like, wow, this really is just haphazard. We have been like patting ourselves on the back for too long, and so much of like these things that we took for granted of like, we constructed this and humans have evolved and fought this. We are winning this battle over entropy, and we are finding a way to stay organized against the mass chaos and everything else. And then part of me is like, oh yeah, I think we just got lucky. I think we've just like gotten lucky so many times, and evolution just really like, a lot of things just luck out. And like the idea that humans are the kind of the idea that we've been able to build these very impressive and organized and intelligent seeming civilizations and technologies, and wow, we can fly around. The idea that we can fly around, and also that like the dumbest person could actually like learn to do that. like yeah, there's like there's some really well-trained pilots, and even that's flawed and everything else. And there's like there's like incredibly skilled people that can fly a fighter jet or something like that. But there's also like, you go to Alaska and it's just like, oh, this is just how we get around. you know, and like any dipshit can zip around and like a little prop plane. And it's amazing to have like so much that we've been able to construct, and at the same time you can just like because of what we've been able to construct, any idiot can do like really impressive things, and like we've been able to get we've been able to get away with things so much that you can be, politicians have become so kind of useless or almost like humans are able to keep going in spite of like things like presidents that you can put anyone in there.
Yeah,
They can be
so,
like
huh?
the worst human being alive, and we can still like kind of keep plugging away and keep going and accomplishing things, and you don't even realize like how flawed something is until now there's like a pandemic and it's like, oh, we actually do have to listen.
We dropped the ball. Yeah.
We need to all be adults now. We need to start like putting on our big boy pants, listening to what experts have to say.
Hey, Shane, can I be extremely rude and run to the bathroom and come straight back?
Sure.
Sorry, man. Embarrassing. I'll be right back.
Actually, that's awesome. Could I have a coffee break?
You certainly can, man.
Not just to go grab a coffee, get one.
Too easy.
Well,
yeah. I'll leave it rolling.
Awesome.
Cool.
Too
Awesome,
easy. Too easy.
Too easy, mate. Coffee at 7 p.m.
Man, that's always the first one I pick up when I visit Australia, and it's always the last one that I lose. I love it so much. I think it's part of like how Australians are so chill, because it's just like ingrained in the language. Too easy.
Oh, there's plenty of non-chill
no.
Australians. Don't worry about that. There's plenty of aggro morons out there.
Right. I do. But I mean, I remember like working with people like producing these shows and stuff, and that would be like, you know, granted, this is before I was a show producer, and maybe this just comes along with it, but I remember like horrible things happening, like, you know, just like a printer messed up a thing, and now like if someone doesn't like scramble to get a thing done, like the show's not going to be advertised, and just always just like, oh, no worries, too easy. Just like
nice, mate.
Just like always. That's, I mean, it's just such a better motto than
we even like make it shorter and just say nurries instead of no worries. Just nurries, mate, nurries.
I didn't even.
Yeah, just
I've
blend
never
words
picked up
into.
on that.
Yeah, just.
I love it so much.
Sentences
I
become
love
words.
that. And then when I want to do the Australian accent, I had one. I went to the Sydney Aquarium, and I did a tour. I did one of the. Not tour, but just, you know, one of the talking exhibits or whatever. Like, oh, at noon they're giving a talk by the thing, and it was by the alligators or whatever, and the guy was like, all right, we got freshies and salties. and so anytime I need to tune into the Australian accent, I just go freshies and salties.
That's the anchor point. You were saying before, it just occurred to me how you know, you could effectively teach a relatively not overly intelligent person how to fly a plane, for example. And I remember, I think I mentioned to you, years ago, when I was in the depths of my conspiracy days, went to Bosnia and volunteered to excavate a pyramid there. But it also, so the main guy running it was called Dr. Osmanagic or something. But he'd always write, Dr. Osmanagic, PhD. I'm like, I think you only need to mention that once, man. Anyway. But when I stopped believing in the Bosnian pyramid conspiracy, it just kind of occurred to me that anyone can get a PhD. You just have to not fail and just persistently plow through that 4 years of whatever it is and not fail, and you're a doctor, I guess. So that kind of demystified the myth of, you know, even academia.
Yeah, I mean, so the conspiracy stuff, I mean, like I said, I think that there's plenty of corruption. So I think that there's you know, the story of Oh, I'm forgetting his name all of a sudden. The seatbelt guy. What was this? Ralph Nader. It is like it's a very good example of like, some corruption and like how it kind of works. Of like, it's not that car companies were like out to kill people. They just didn't really care that much. If they did, if it was like going to cost them too much to correct it, and we all tell ourselves a story, and at the time, the narrative, and a lot of people bought into it, was that this is operator error. This isn't the car, this is the driver. Drivers are driving recklessly. This is what causes car accidents. Putting ownership on the consumer, rather than, this is like happened again and again. This is actually the idea of a carbon footprint is something that that was created by British Petroleum, which was to put ownership on the individual rather than corporations, rather than oil companies. Of like, hey, you little litter bugs out there, you could start using less water and stuff like that. And so there's one thing to like say that, and then there's another to say like it's manufacture, like the idea of like, say, Bill Gates manufacturing a virus so he can like microchip people or whatever. That people are like looking up these conspiracy theorists on their phone and entering in all their info to get to more conspiracy theorists about how they're being tracked.
Which is a tracking device anyway, so well done.
Right. Oh, yes. Here's my email. Send me more information on how I'm being tracked. But it's they're like, look, there's footage. Like scientists were modeling possible scientists were modeling a virus just like this. And like, yes, I hope they were. And part of the reason why we have like it's like Redembidol or some, I forget, some treatment that's like it's helping people in severe cases, remdesivir, something like that. It is because they were modeling eventualities. This isn't the first coronavirus. You need to be able to predict, just like when you make a flu vaccine, you need to estimate what kind of flu might exist a year from now. That doesn't mean you caused the thing. It's like, yeah, I believe in cover-ups of things, but for me to think like that would be like thinking that would be like thinking, oh, car manufacturers are actually causing car wrecks because they want there to be a lower population. And look at them doing crash tests. Look, they've been crash testing their cars. It's like they want you to crash. They've modeled this. Like, no, that's actually not what the purpose of a crash test is.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Test the limits of what a car can do to make them safer, to prevent accidents from happening, and to lessen the impact of accidents when they do happen. And the saddest thing of all of this to me is that it's just a very lack of predictability and lack of control, as I'm sure you've heard from listening to the podcast, are the two biggest stressors that there are. And in a crisis situation like this, where the world's kind of turned upside down, and a lot of people, especially someone who's like young, and like maybe has like a wait staff job or something like this, and you're young and figuring things out and angsty about authority, as I was at that age. These are the first kind of, this is when you get into conspiracy stuff anyway. Early 20s or whatever. That's like prime time for getting into conspiracies. A lot of people do. That's the time that I found myself getting into them more. And now your world's been turned upside down, and confronting the when you have a lack of predictability and lack of control, you can develop this learned helplessness where you stop pursuing control over a problem. You stop problem solving because to you there is no predictability over threats. There is no control over this threat. You've learned that the world is full of these unpredictable, uncontrollable threats. And then one of the things, and then consciousness just takes over and creates a story after that, and you project everything outward. And so one of the narratives that you come up with is that the reason why I'm not going to do anything today
is because
there's nothing worth doing. Because everything's stacked against me. And so the really troubling thing about these stories is it gives people an excuse, a narrative that they can tell themselves to give up. I am pro giving up. I give up all the time. I tell people how pointless all this fucking existence is all the time. I couldn't say it enough. A lot of people could do with a little dose of doubt from time to time, as far as I'm concerned. As far as I'm concerned, it's done me I've gotten plenty far in life never believing in myself for a second. I don't need another self-help book pushed down my throat, but at the same time, to tell yourself that you have no control over anything in life is just as delusional, and it's the kind of delusion that unlike the guy going to CrossFit telling himself that everything's going to be jolly and good, and if you just do push-ups, your life's going to be perfect. At least that dude's doing push-ups. That dude might be lying to himself, but at least he's getting after it. Yeah. And you're gonna have a better chance at life if you do. And that's the real troubling thing is it's not in what people are saying. It's not in what we're all spinning narratives all the time. It's what I think it's saying about an individual, and about a culture. When I hear particular narratives coming out, I feel like this is much in the way in a psychedelic experience, we tune into these underlying, like, oh, here's why I think these things that I often think. I think that happens in a crisis where you can really see that as well, and so I just hope people don't give up and stop spinning stories to give up. And it's unfortunate to me that the psychedelic community, I blame weed and in particular dabs.
Okay.
more than I do psychedelics, which I'm not against either of those things, but they do just have a little more propensity for paranoia, and when used chronically, I think do tend to sometimes make particular individuals just a little more paranoid as like a resting state. And I think that's why so many people in the community are so into this idea. And then you have the other thing of like, it's a bunch of flow boys that want to like make up for, like, you can advertise your fitness. You're one of the best painters I've ever seen. Like, it's not like a real hard sell to be like, hey ladies, look what I can do. I have some impressive traits. There's a lot of dudes in the psychedelic community that don't have a lot of stuff that they can conspicuously advertise in the way that I can peddle jokes or whatever around. And it's easier to spin yarns about why, you're broke or not doing things or jobless or whatever else than it is to actually just get out there and get after it.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is not to like do any kind of victim blaming. And this is not to be, I'm not some like pro productivity,
CrossFit
pro
dude.
motivational.
You're into CrossFit, aren't you? Yeah.
I have done some CrossFit.
Your Instagram's full of videos.
But the other, it's just, I'm, I have like, I don't know if you saw my dumb, like Mr. Silver Linings character that I did, like attacking the motivational speaker type stuff. I was getting really upset. Joe Rogan's finally taken a turn and like advertising masks and everything. I was kind of getting upset with him just peddling his same like, well, we just need to work out and have an immune system, and then we're not gonna have to worry about getting a virus. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like, your fucking listeners are gonna believe that shit. Like, you gotta be careful when you're saying stuff like that. So there's two sides of it, and then anyway, I don't want to be saying one side or the other. It's just that when it comes to conspiracy theorists, I think that there's a lot of learned helplessness in there, and I hope that people stop buying into that stuff, because it's also just like, they're fun ideas.
They're fun. They're very fun.
Sound real neat.
Yep.
And people are getting too sucked into it, and it requires so little evidence. The amount of time and energy spent, like at first it's just easy. It's easy to not put a mask on and then be like, Google side effects of wearing a mask, and then go to page 30 of a Google search and try to find like some video from some person that says, I'm Dr. Anti-Mask PhD, and then see some little spiel that validates what you don't want to do, which is live in a new, scary world with an invisible threat that we don't understand very well, and you look for a validation for that. But at this point, we're 5 months into this. Anyone can take an infectious disease class and actually learn how this shit works. So if you're going to peddle that shit, you better look a little further than a stupid 10-minute long YouTube video about how masks work. And where the fuck were you anti-maskers when I wore a mask in every factory job that I ever had? Where were you telling me about how I was going to go brain dead from carbon poisoning or whatever horse shit they're peddling? My dad, who wears a mask at his shop every day, seems like he's doing just fine and hasn't gotten
man.
And so
finally some sensible truth. I like it. I like it. Much overdue. Same, exactly. Like, why does every nurse wear it if it's so fucking bad for you? It's just a dumb argument. But well, man, people are bored, and that's another thing. People are so fucking bored right now because we're all in lockdown. So, there's more time to do it.
Here's I try to have more sympathy for people, because here's what I'm not experiencing. Boredom, not even close. I haven't been bored for a second of this. This is the most, by the way, if you're bored, you're in the most amazing human experience and human experiment. There's history. This is history. You're never going to forget this. Like, find a new way to reframe this. Put your anthropology hat on and just look at the human condition right now. You shouldn't be too bored. If you're bored, it's probably because you're overstimulating yourself with superficial, like, action movies or some shit like that, where you could just like sit back and think. I mean, just sitting back and thinking about what's happening right now in the world is endless. what are we gonna run out of food? Like, what the fuck is gonna? What if cows get this shit? What? How is this an opportunity for education to change? How could we rethink everything that we do right now? How could we rethink remote learning? How, if we do need to open up schools, how do you house children and keep them social distancing? Just sit back and wonder. It's never ending. This has been the most amazing time in my lifetime to wonder, to learn, to talk to other people. Other people are opening up. People are, yes, we're divided, but people are actually talking about some real shit for some of the first time in my human experience. This is incredible to me. So I'm sorry if you are bored, but I don't identify. Depression, I absolutely understand as someone who's been chronically depressed for 30 years. Man, I'm sorry. I feel for you. I haven't been depressed. I've been experiencing anxiety, which is hard for me because I'm not used to it at all. But I feel, I feel like I'm not being sympathetic enough to the people confronting depression for the first time in their lives in a way that they never really have. I forget because I've gone through so much like mental health shit, and like I've thought about killing myself so many times that it's just like old news to me.
Right.
That I forget like some people are just experiencing some of these thoughts for the first time.
That's another thing
And
about you,
also-
man. Like, I'm so grateful for the amount of times I've heard you be just like really kind of open book about your mental health struggles, because like exactly like you say,
Yeah.
people are really opening up for the first time, and there's a lot of stuff many other people don't know how to relate to, or with that kind of stuff. You said one thing on Duncan's recent podcast you did, where you were in a psych ward, and you go in with a paranoid state, and the color coding, for example, it's the wrong environment for someone to enter in a paranoid state, a worked up state.
Yeah.
So little things. I think you were saying every room has got color coding, so the doctors or nurses can know the needs of the patients. And in a paranoid state, you might look at that color coding and try and see it as a puzzle that needs to be cracked, or a system that's a code against you. And what they should be saying is, if you've got any questions about that color coding, for example, ask, we'd be happy to say. And I was like, that to me just says so much about, I don't know, even just the psychological system of what needs a huge revamp of it all. And just little tips like that, like why, like, the average person like myself can take a lot from hearing that, but also the doctors in charge could take so much from hearing that kind of stuff. And I think it's really
I'm gonna try to go after it, man. I'm gonna
man.
try to get some people that are in positions to at least speak to why they are the way they are, if not people that might be able to influence things, because it really is, speaking of getting back to what do I do in the when I help facilitate retreats in Jamaica, which I never said. I just bring my experience and listen to people, tell people a couple things of like, here's some heads up of what to expect. And I think that right now, and this is why I'm like frustrated with not just conspiracy theorists, but comedian friends of mine, that, when this first happened, I was just like, hey, will you please put, like, I have some amazing scientists. Will you please just get them on your podcast? Like Pete Holmes had this woman, Nina Pfefferman, on.
Love Pete. And
this wasn't to promote me. They didn't ever need to mention me. I was just like, hey, I just know this is just fucking serious. And there's comedians using motivated reasoning to downplay it because they're
frustrated,
out of luck, and or out of work, I mean, and want to think of validate reasons for like getting on stage. There's more motivation for a comedian and a comedy club owner to do a comedy show than there is for an audience to go and potentially risk their health to go to one. And these are people with platforms, that a lot of people respect their opinions because they are so honest and often fairly intelligent and deliver things in a fun and funny way. And so, that's what my frustration has been, is that I think that comedians and that are, modern-ish day philosophers and stuff, and people in the psychedelic community, I think that people in the psychedelic community are really well suited for taking charge and helping guide people through this global mental health crisis that we're all going through.
And
that
is literally what it is, isn't it? There is a global mental health crisis. I mean, there's one thing like with psychology, as I'm not canning it at all, because the amount we know about the mind is amazing, and it's also all we've got. But maybe I'd be interested to hear what you think about this. It seems as though as far as sciences go, every science is kind of progressing. Psychology, we got up to a very good state, but however, the catastrophe of mental illness is just getting worse and worse, it seems. I don't know whether we're diagnosing it more or whether more people are suffering, but it's definitely, I know a lot of people that are suffering, a lot of people. And what is the next leap that maybe psychology needs to take? I personally think it's the integration of psychedelic research into cracking open the mind and dealing with the traumas. What MAPS does with the MDMA therapy is amazing. You can take MDMA and go through marriage counseling and really fire off the things bothering you with your partner and open up with a loving heart. Same with post-traumatic stress and cracking into those traumas and dealing with it with the blanket of love in there. But I'd love more than MDMA to see some proper scientific trying to grapple what the fuck is going on with mushrooms, acid, DMT, because this is the fucking mystery.
And I think that's exactly, Rick Doblin is very intelligent in this way as to like figuring out how to move and maybe it's not even intelligence at this point. Maybe it's just he's been throwing so much spaghetti against the wall, so much trial and error through the decades he's been doing it, that he's just like zoned in on the things that work, because MDMA is definitely the way toward normalization, because no one's coming back from an MDMA experience reporting a purple woman or entities or anything like that.
Right.
Right. And then you got the veterans and the victims of sexual assault and this sort of thing that you can, and no one's really hallucinating. This is just, making you feel like this blissful, empathetic feeling. And it's very relatable. And so I think it's just very safe and easy.
Stepping stones,
and we live in a world that's into safe and easy. That's an easy thing to market.
And it's realistic to start with that, jumping into the deep end probably might face more hurdles and restrictions, I guess, from the systems that be or whatever. But yeah, I think there is. I heard one podcast, and there's actually a guy in Melbourne, Australia, who I've been trying to get on, but he's very busy, who is doing a lot of psychedelic research in LSD and mushrooms and those kinds of experiences. And I'd love to know where they're at. And the medicinal benefits. I mean, ayahuasca, it's like a huge, it changes people's lives. Completely can change people's lives, and most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, for the significant better. I do find your story also very interesting, that you illustrate through psychonautics. Everybody get onto that doco. It's got it all, that documentary. It's got it all. It's got scientific evaluation of the psychedelics. It's got taking the drugs. It's got comedy in it. It's great. But it can go. There are risks. I preach about the benefits of psychedelics probably way too much, but and often do forget to talk about the risks.
If I was ever going to have a mental break, I'm happy that it happened during the filming of that documentary, because it put such a caveat, it put such just a natural disclaimer within it. In fact, I saw some reviews that are like, shouldn't he have warned about the potential I'm like, I opened the documentary with saying I just got out of a psych ward. What do you want? A little banner that says a Surgeon General's warning or something like that? Give me a break.
Yeah.
But the point is that I'm happy that it happened then, because had it not, it would have been an overglorification of the experience, for sure.
I mean, maybe that's all part of the delicate puzzle, unfolding reality. Man. It's perfectly
it might be
there.
And so to that point, the other things that I've thought in terms of what is the reality of this, and is it possible that we're living in a simulation? It does make sense to me that things that possibly future us, other much more intelligent aliens, whatever else, in the future, at some, it seems like a natural, just as scientists now try to go through and gain a greater narrative of what our history was. When I was a kid, I peddled a horseshit story about Christopher Columbus, but then you had people's history of the United States by Howard Zinn or something and you had it goes back and forth, and people are trying to figure out what this accurate version is, and building an accurate picture of history through evolutionary theory to build future projections going forward. It makes sense that any future things would also do that. Now we have everything recorded. People can literally go through and see when Shane said the thing to Jack that made him paint this thing when he was listening to Spangle on Spotify. That's when he put that kind of brushstroke in, because it was on Instagram Live or whatever, and then that led to this one scientist that saw the painting having this idea that led to this idea that eventually led to time travel. There'd eventually be this way of analyzing every little minute butterfly effect, and then eventually creating some sort of simulation where the idea is just to make life and existence in complex organisms and computation last longer. And could something make a universe before the universe collapses in on itself? Is there a way of making universes last longer and longer and longer and longer? And even though us humans might be a speck of dust, there might be something that is able to read these little nuance influences all around the universe that does a little press a button here, a little move a particle here, and this different galaxy leads to another world crashing into this one. And who knows? But something like that could potentially be happening, and something like that could potentially want to insert itself in every possible conceivable reality to collect more data, to get every vantage point, to get every experience from getting to experience what being a Shane Mauss talking to a Jack Rowland is like, to being an ant, being giving giving birth right now at this moment, and so within that, there might be some underlying different structure or dimension or that us humans in this moment can't perceive. And when we take some psychedelic that inhibits our usual perception or whatever, we are able to tap into this universe that's all around us all of the time, where there is a purple lady and whatnot existing. That's another, like, I think, somewhat rational-ish view of things. And where you lose me is when it's just like, oh, that's just a spirit. Like, well, I don't even know what that means. Like,
right.
yeah. But when I see it, like, if I smoked DMT right now, I'd be like, oh, I just saw spirit. Like, that's certainly the first guess at what these worlds are. And so I also find value in the traditional looks at them and perceptions and the practices that they've stumbled upon in my that lead to better experiences. And so the point I always make is it really doesn't matter how you look at these things. It seems pretty important.
Yeah.
And it seems pretty interesting. And the idea that we aren't able to experiment more, even if it means maybe not Shane and Jack just getting to gobble mushrooms and hang out on Zoom, chatting about the experience. Maybe if that's not legal, you could certainly make it legal for scientists to study the thing. Like, it's still that's the bare minimum of what should be possible. Any argument against making a drug unstudyable or anything else that isn't something to do with, like,
now there's a conspiracy.
That borders into conspiracy theory. And I think a lot of this started as this is the other thing. A lot of this, I think, started as a conspiracy. I think it came out of, like, the 60s and Nixon and everything was a conspiracy. And now it's just yeah. Oh, and now it's just ignorance. So it started as conspiracy, and now it's just this historical holdover, and people don't know why they behave the way that they do any more than people don't know why they say God bless you and the origins of saying that expression, which had to do with a pandemic at the time, and now we just say it when someone sneezes. You just kind of forget the original intent or meaning behind it. In that same way, I think that's much of the war on drugs now. It just hasn't been looked at seriously by any politicians in a while because they haven't really thought to. And
probably too risky if you're trying to constantly get re-elected.
Right.
You're talking, the simulation theory. I just kind of, I've never quite made friends with it, but now that I think about it, it's it would neatly tie up the UFO phenomenon too, wouldn't it? I mean, now you've got all these, like the Pentagon, I think, is now admitting that they're releasing videos of tracking UFOs. And if it was...
Right.
And people say, well, jumping to aliens is such a big jump. And it's like, well, maybe if that simulation theory is probable, that would neatly tie up why things could zip through time and space as quick as they can. Tony, do you, with all your talking to scientists through your podcast, have you spoken to many of them about the simulation theory, and what's the kind of scientific, are they on board, or they just laugh it off, or?
Well, I haven't really talked about that too much, and two, we should probably warn any listeners that when I'm a guest on podcasts, I really get to share all of my ideas and experiences and get a little far out. A big part of what my podcast is like grounding,
Right.
and figuring out like what we know we don't know. And I kind of, in my efforts to normalize basically my thing is get the people taking psychedelics more into science, get science more into psychedelics, and and the world is a better place. And so that being said, I tend to bias my Here We Are podcast toward the side of grounding. And so when I like, the most far out stuff that I get out there is like, you would never know it. Like, I'll have someone on, like a good example would be like Charan Reganatha, I think is his name, or something. I forget. It's I'm bad with names. But we had 2 episodes in a row about memory. And so I have a lot of ideas about consciousness and how memory works from the psychedelic state. But when I go to talk to a memory researcher, I don't tell them that's where I'm getting my ideas from.
Right. Yep.
I just have ideas about memory and consciousness. So I just ask. But so a lot of my, if I'm talking with a psychologist, there's a lot of ideas that I came up with from the psychedelic experience, but I don't outwardly say that. And same with simulation theory, which I'm also like, I've also been angsty about simulation theory in this, because I've been like, this is fucking escapism. And like, this isn't, like I said earlier, I'm like, come on now, like, this is, I don't care. Like, I'm normally more than happy to have the conversation about simulations, but we were just as likely to be in a simulation in 2019 as we are in crazy 2020. And it's not that crazy. Pandemics have happened, and entire species get wiped out by viruses all the time. The only thing that's crazy is that we have like cameras and can like see it happening around the world and have the tools to like be mindful that it's happening. That's the only real crazy, like, novel thing about any of this. But all that is to say is that I keep my podcast a little toward the grounded side, and I probably come off like a dick and close-minded to some. But I love having these big ideas. It's just that, like, right now, when shit's hitting the fan, I'm like, hey, conspiracy theorists, let's go find Bigfoot. You know why? Because it's outdoors in nature. You can do it in a distanced way. You can stay 6 feet apart, and
they get vitamin D.
Rather than you convince me that the world's somehow getting more Orwellian, and the way in which that we're doing that is by forcing masks. You're mandating anonymity in the public.
It's such a good point.
That's how these evil geniuses are trying to control us, by, for the first time ever, allowing the public to go out and look like a bank robber, consequence free.
Seriously.
And like organize protests.
It's such a
and
good point.
Everything else. Like, that's just shit planning.
Yeah.
By some evil genius.
By a joker in the works. Seriously. Yeah. We're simultaneously being tracked, but also allowed to hide our faces. All part of the big web of I don't know, man. It's
I will say Duncan Trussell gave me a lot to think about, which was like, yeah, it makes perfect sense that some country that doesn't like us would be trying to drive us out of our minds and spread bad information while keeping their people. I would say the downside of that is like, oopsie daisies. If you're, say, China or Russia or something trying to destabilize the U.S. by getting us to spread anti-mask propaganda, so less of us will spread masks. Well, guess who's the biggest maker of media? So like, whatever the U.S. is putting out there, it's gonna spread.
Right.
So to make us anti-maskers is to make your own population anti-maskers, because there's going to be other people following suit. So that's what I would say to that.
I love it. Shane, man, we've smashed it, dude.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Oh man, you're awesome. You are just
I feel like
a joy to talk to, man. Seriously.
Thanks. I've spent so much time by myself. I was just like so excited to talk with another amazing person in the field of psychedelic. I don't know, communication, I guess.
Yep.
And so, yes, I mean, sorry if I blabbed too much. I feel like I did, but I was
you
just so
talked way
excited to
too
talk
much
to you.
on the platform that is purely designed for talking, man. No, you're again, man, like seriously, I really appreciate everything you do. Your open book honesty, which I just think allows so many people to relate to. Your kind of your dedication to the truth, really. Your podcast and your psychedelic explorations really are trying to figure out what's going on, and in a perfect balance of way the fuck out there and really grounded. It's like a really good
Thanks, man. I appreciate
combination.
that. I'm trying.
Yeah, man. So plugs, plug away. Everyone get on to Here We Are podcast. Yeah, go for it. Anything you
All right, I've done this before. All right, Shay, get ready, everybody. Here comes the plug vomit. All right, ShaneMauss.com is the best way to see all of my stuff. I newly revamped the Here We Are podcast.com website, which I still need to upload all 300 past episodes, but much of the ones that I've done in the pandemic are up there. ShaneMauss.com is next on the revamp list. I have a new podcast I'll be telling you about soon. Actually, Jack, I'll probably be asking you to get on it. But
hell yeah,
secret project delivered next month. If you follow me on Patreon, you can get some first looks. And I use Instagram as the social media of choice right now for me. I've been having fun. I never used Instagram before quarantine. My assistant would sometimes post like a show poster or whatever, but if you go through my history, I maybe have had an account for a year or two, but I never actually put a post of my own up until quarantine. Didn't know why people would want to see a picture of like what I was eating or whatever. And since quarantine, I've been really enjoying finding like, I don't know, I think I'm getting kind of good on it. I think I'm like figuring out like fun ways of putting like cool little clips of my podcast and stuff that I just like never thought to do before all of this. And so bear with me as I still look like as your grandpa trying to like make a meme, but I am starting to figure it out and getting a little better. And it's been fun. I didn't think that I'd actually enjoy it being 8 years late to Instagram, but I'm actually like enjoying myself a little bit. So I'd say follow me on there. If you want to see more of my like political snark, follow me on Twitter And Psychonautics, a comics exploration of psychedelics, is, I don't know if it's for free on Amazon in Australia. You might have to purchase it. But if you're some places, it's free on Amazon with the Amazon Prime account.
Yeah, I rented
Otherwise,
it on
just
YouTube.
go to psychonautics.com.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
cool.
can rent it on YouTube. You may need a VPN for that one, but yeah, Amazon.
I know
YouTube.
there's a way, because there's
Yeah.
Venmo,
Yeah.
or not Venmo, Vimeo. You can Venmo me money if you want, but
Yeah.
there's Vimeo that it's available, which I think is global. I know there's like 20 platforms like total, where it's just like all over the whatever the distribution. I just know Amazon because I'm in the US and it's free on there, and that's what I'm mostly telling people about. But man, I appreciate it, and legit, I love Australia. It's my favorite. It's not my favorite cultural experience, but it's my favorite place of, like, if I was gonna live somewhere, if I was less dependent on touring, I think I'd probably. I'm about to lose some people. I think I'd probably pick Sydney.
Yeah, Sydney's
but
great.
I love
There's a
Melbourne
rift.
as well.
There's a rift, but I think Sydney's great. I think it's.
I really love. I love Melbourne as well.
Yeah.
But I love everything about Australia.
Thank you.
And Sydney's got to be top 5 cities in the world for me.
It's nice. Yep, totally.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Shane. I really appreciate it, and thanks for listening, everybody. Take care.